Welcome to the Mentoring Moments, Empowering Leaders to Mentor Our Future podcast. I am Dr. RobWottawa and believe that through teacher and leader mentorship, we can impact our future through our influences on students. As much as we believe in the power and impact of mentorship, many shy away from this rewarding work. The goal of these episodes is to lean into the work with teachers and leaders, hear their stories, and have fun with the mentoring process. Hello everyone and welcome to Mentoring Moments. I'm going to do my second solo episode here, and my startup is, what does a leader's career look like from start to what comes after finish? Now, over these last 4 conversations, we've traced the entire arc. We met Deb Winter, who after decades is still mentoring from retirement, Todd Bloomer, who walked away at his peak to coach others, Dan Brazil, the master teacher building leadership from within the art room, and Dr. Jason Stanton, the district leader innovating from inside the system. It's like we mapped the 4 seasons of a leadership journey. But what's underneath those seasons today? I'm connecting their stories and sharing a new lens of perspective that's shaping my work, the mentorship map. All right, so let's talk about Dan Brazil for a second, and we're going to say that he represents the spring. He's the season of planting. His leadership is the grassroots. He's got the art club, he's got the field trips, he's got the community awards, but he's not waiting for that title because he's leading anyway, right? So he's building influence through passion and presence. So, but what and how does this really define the spring? Well, it's the willingness to meet people where they are, right? And the story that he shared, I thought was so eye-opening for me that I've shared it with many people. I even shared it with some of my teachers. And that was the 12-year-old boy that was kind of acting up in class, and Mr. Brazil, Dan, turns to the student and says, "Can you just be normal?" Right? Can you just be normal? We've all been there, right? Where you get that moment of loss, and because you're just trying to get the students to do what you want them to do, right? And the kid turns around and goes, "Mr. Brazil, how were you when you were 12?" I mean, wow, that's a brilliant moment right there. And Dan goes, "I was like you, bro. I was just like you. I was a pain in the neck." So what do we have to do? We have to meet kids where they are, right? And as a teacher, it's important to differentiate. It's important to get to know our kids. Small things make a big difference, right? Standing in front of your door every single day and saying high five, or what's your favorite pizza topping, just to get to know where they are. And I'll even go a little bit further, right? So we always talk about teachers as a school leader. We always say, teachers, you have to differentiate your instruction, differentiate your instruction. Well, leaders out there, you have to differentiate your leadership to your teachers, right? You have to meet your teachers where they are, because if we don't meet people where they are, we will never be able to lead them. And like I said, teachers are leaders and leaders are teachers. And I'm going to try to flip the script on things that we've been talking about for years, like classroom management. I want to flip that to classroom leadership. So really important to think about meeting people where they are. So let's move on to the summer, right? So we're gonna get some warm here right now in Long Island, New York. We are in the middle of winter and it's freezing. We have snow on the ground. But Jason Stanton, Dr. Stanton, represents our summer. He's the season of growth. He's full bloom. He's in the thick of leadership. He's using his position as a district director. He's designing new pathways for students. He's pairing courses together and scaling innovation. His work asks, how do you turn a good system into a great, future-proof one? He's just not maintaining the garden, right? He's engineering new ways for it to grow. So he has the experience of cultivating that soil, cultivating that growth, and then understanding how to modify things to make things better. And he's focusing on that transformational leadership and the collective efficacy of teachers. And it's about making sure the entire ecosystem thrives, not just for certain plants, but for the entire garden, right? It's so important that we understand that we have to look at the bigger picture, and we have to understand that innovation takes risk, and we have to believe in our teachers, and that's where the teacher efficacy comes from. And he's doing so many things in so many different places and I'm going to give him a shout out. He did a power hour for one of our other organizations, and the organization had said that his Master the Master schedule was by far the largest turnout that they've ever had, and that's because he's cultivating this amazing season of growth, and he's blooming and is an outstanding leader, and he's coming into his own. But he's also able to reflect and think back and understand that this transformational leadership, that you need to bring people in, meet people where they are, and build that collective efficacy in order to continue to maintain the entire ecosystem of the school building, the school district, and we're using the summer and the garden as kind of the metaphor for Dr. Stanton. All right, so season 3, we're going to get into the autumn here with Mr. Todd Bloomer. Now, Todd represents the season of harvest, the intentional transition. He had the self awareness to leave his dream job as a principal at his peak, choosing to transform his experience into a blueprint for others, helping others, always supporting others. And it's a masterclass in knowing when your impact needs a new shape, when to gather what you've learned and plant it elsewhere. So there's that planting, right? Understanding where you've been, making some changes, and growing further. And his mission is now to coach principals to avoid burnout that he had, to find that joy, to keep that love, to ensure that that harvest of that experience and that need to feed the future and season and help others. One of the things I talked about this morning on my morning video was Carl Lewin's change theory. And we talk about how we have to melt the ice to move to water to be able to transform things. And all the things that we're talking about here is growing gardens and harvesting. And you have to use the water, and the water gets to the roots, gets to the important part. So Todd is the water. He's digging down into the roots of new people, trying to give them the joy of leadership and avoid that burnout. And we talk about burnout quite frequently, and my work is rooted in teachers and mentorship, and we know that teachers leave the job in the first 5 years, and sometimes it's because of burnout. There is so much responsibility put on teachers, veteran teachers, new teachers alike, and we keep putting on new initiatives. Lauren Kaufman had talked about in one of our early podcasts about how, it's like the buffet table, right? And we keep putting more things on a teacher's plate, keep putting things on, and we never take things off, right? So scary. So we have our transformer, Todd Bloomer, who's going into the roots of the plants and is transforming the harvest and transforming people to get the joy back in the work. And our final person, Deb Winter, she's our sustainer, and it's kind of ironic. Her real name is Deb Winter, and she's a good dear friend of mine, and she happens to represent the winter season. And the reason for that is the winter season is the season of wisdom. It's the season of sustained influence. With the decades of expertise haven't retired, they've been repurposed into a 21-year-old collegial circle for special education administrators. She proves that leaders' end game isn't an exit. No. It's going to be mentorship loop. Quiet, steady system of support that outlasts any role. She provides the sanity checks, if you will, right? The scripts that help leaders navigate their toughest days. She's the person I can call up right now and ask for some help, and she will pick up the phone. She is always there for us. She's always there for her people and her leaders, and she is continuously providing and proving her wisdom that was always earned and now is cultivated forever and ever and ever. And all of this work is now being poured into our special education realm of collegial circle, and it's specified, right? But again, she's cultivating. She is helping and supporting, and she's providing that wisdom, that sage, if you will. And this is how now I want to bring things together, that we're charting what I call the mentorship map, right? Now, mapping these 4 seasons got me thinking about the deeper patterns of how we grow. It's a theme that's becoming the heart of my next project. I'm starting to see all of these different conversations through a different lens, right? Deb is the 21-year collegial circle and the ultimate example of wisdom being passed forward, right? But isn't Dan's art room, that's at the moment of the student, the perfect ecosystem of nurturing his unseen potential? these aren't just career changes, right? They feel like different spaces we occupy. Sometimes as guides, sometimes as explorers, always as learners. What if we stopped looking at mentorship as a ladder and we're stepping up, and we started looking at it and seeing it as a landscape we travel through? And I'd like to start to call this idea the mentorship map. And it's shaping everything I'm writing about next. Right, this podcast is where I get to start that territory with all of you in real time, and it's something that I've been thinking about how we can map out our mentorship. So I'm going to take a brief pause here, and a reason I'm going to take a brief pause is I'm going to move to some questions that were given to me over the last couple of months before this podcast. So let's move on to some questions. Questions I think many of you might be wondering or pondering, right? So the first question, which was inspired by Tom Bloomer's big transition, right? How do you know when it's time to leave a season and when it's time to dig deeper and grow where you've planted? That's a great question. For me personally, I was able to be in a position for over a decade, and I was able to really, really grow myself. But the thing that I want to talk about is that, the essence of Todd's autumn, right? He's in the fall. You think about that signal isn't always burnout, right? Sometimes it's a quiet feeling that's a learning curve that was flattened, or your harvest is starting to feel like it needs fertilization, it needs to be new ground. I'm reading right now the book Let Them, and the idea of sometimes you need to know when you're stressed, when you need to let go, and when you need to move forward. So, so important, right? And it's about reading your own map. Are you still in a valley of growth, or have you reached the ridge where your experience could offer a clearer view of others elsewhere? I've learned as I moved into another district that I made a lot of mistakes in my first district as a leader. I believe I began as an administrator and shifted to become a leader. And the leadership skills and education that I've gained over the years, I feel like has really assisted me in my new role. I get to test out my new leadership. I get to test out strategies that I feel are tried and true and work, and I get to see quick results. And I'm really, really, really fortunate because the teachers that I'm working with are sharing the positive feedback. Things like, hey, Rob, you've been here for 4 months and you've made so many great changes already based on his input and that teacher efficacy, right? So here's another question for us, right? It's the second question that's inspired by Deb Winter's legacy. For those of us not near retirement, that would be me, how do you build mentorship practices that are sustainable for long haul, not just for another flash in the pan initiative? Well, this is a great question, not only for leaders, but it's also for teachers as well, because I'm sure you've heard of this, the presentation that's one and done, right? You go to the auditorium, you have a guest speaker, they do a fantastic job of speaking and get on fire, and then they leave, and maybe you get a little bit of rah-rah afterwards from maybe some of your district leaders or school leaders, and then it's gone. And you're now in October and November, and you're like, that presentation was great. Why are we still doing that thing? Are we doing that thing? I have no idea because it's a one and done. So what Deb talks about here is the circle works because it answers a perennial human need, the need for a safe, smart sounding board, right? Sustainability comes from building a practice, not launching a program, right? If you want to sustain change and you want to sustain mentorship, you have to make something a practice. It has to be that's what we do here. If it's a program, it's something that is something we just have, right? It's not something we believe. When we believe something, it becomes a practice. So you have to start small, right? Maybe have your monthly coffee and clarity meetings. I have coffee meetings with my veteran teachers. Actually, I had a conversation today with one of them. I was walking down the hallway and she's like, why are you in the building today? And I was like, oh, I'm here to see one of our new teachers. And I said, hey, when do you want a coffee clot? She's like, I'll send you an email. right? So that's so important to do that, to plant those seeds, to build mentorship moments, right? It's about creating a rhythm of support that becomes part of our ecosystem. It becomes part of our way, just like Dan's art club did in his school. It's super important to do all of those small things because small things make a big difference. All right. So here we go. Our RW Rapid Fire Host Edition Part 2, right? Time for me to get into the hot seat for myself and my own rapid fire inspired by the four seasons. Okay. So which season of leadership do you think is most overlooked in schools today? Well, huh. I think for me it might be the autumn, right? That intentional transition where we celebrate maybe a new start, which is the spring. That's something we're always like, oh yeah, new start. We're super excited about it. And then the big achievements, which is the summer. We get super excited about the new things that happen, and we get to succeed on it. And winter, I think we look at winter and we go, okay, that's the wise person. That's the person I'm going to for information. There's a person that I have that I go to regularly that I consider to be my mentor at my new district, and I talk to that person probably about 2 or 3 times a week. So I think that the winter season is pretty well established, but that autumn season is where we really talk about the endings of things, the cultivating of new ideas, and digging into this like that Todd shows us, right? That intentional transition, right? How do we decide that it's time to make a change for ourselves? And I think the meter for us would be probably when you wake up in the morning and you're not thinking, I get to go to school, you're thinking, I have to go to work. And I think if you're thinking that way, that season of autumn is worth a conversation. All right, number two, on our mentorship map, you currently more of an explorer or a guide? Well, I think a long time ago, definitely was an explorer because I was learning a lot of new things. But I think at this point now, I feel like I feel like I'm a guide because I've been working with new teachers regularly. But I also feel like I'm an explorer because I'm charting kind of a new map in a new district. But I also feel like I've cultivated leadership practices and leadership insights that have been really helpful that are guiding me to do really great things. And I think that I'm kind of doing a little bit of both in my current role. So that's kind of a hard question for me. I definitely am not what I call to be in the valley. I'm not in the valley. I talk about that later on in the future. It's something I've been writing about. So it's something that I'm doing both. Yep, I'm doing both. So what's one piece of advice that you'd give your spring self? Hmm, I think so. When I first started, I knew in my mind that the relationships were really important, right? However, I also spent a lot of time, I think, in my office. And I love what Todd Bloomer says. Todd Bloomer says, people before paper. And I think there was a lot of times, unfortunately, in my beginning of my career, not that I put paper first, but I don't know if I always put people first. So I really would, if I could go back to my excited self back in the spring, I would talk about um, relationships, but also networking. Right, that's something that I was just on a Zoom with a team of people, and we were talking about the power of networking and how oftentimes veteran leaders don't pass forward that to new leaders. Hey, who are you networking with? Are you going to conferences? Are you doing podcasts? Are you speaking to people? Who are you connecting with? What type of organizations are you connecting with? So, one of the other things I would say to my younger self is not only build the relationships of the organization within yours, build and cultivate connections and outside of your network. So this way you can build a network of leaders and teachers across our counties to be able to help our people, right? Because oftentimes, you're in one role in your district and you might only have that one role. You're the only assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction in your district. You're the only superintendent. You're the only director of fine and performing arts. Who am I going to talk to in my district that really understands the nitty gritty of what I need to do and need to think about? Well, reach out to a network of people of those same titles but in different places. And they will offer a lot of different lenses of perspectives. So that is how we're going to cultivate a lot of different things. All right, so here's what we're going to move towards our mic drop and our ending here. I don't want to take up all of your time. These solo episodes are, for me, they're a little unique. I feel like I'm talking to myself. It's a challenge for me. I don't like listening to myself. So here's my takeaway from these 4 seasons, right? We talked about leadership is not a ladder. It's a cycle. Okay. And our personal mentorship map is the terrain that we have to navigate through each of those cycles. What is your mission this week? So this is what I'm charging you with, right? Identify one person in a different season than you. If you're in summer, find someone in spring and water their ideas. If you're in winter, find someone in autumn, help them harvest their lessons. And then tell me about it. Call me up, email me, text me, drop a line on my socials, do those things, right? And don't forget to use hashtag mentoring moments when you share your story. And if the idea of your own mentorship map intrigues you, if Dan's story resonates, or you felt yourself shifting between the guide and the explorer, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And here you can use the hashtag RW Mentorship Map. So again, talking about mentoring moments, hashtag RW Mentoring Moments. And if we're talking about our mentoring map, use RW Mentorship Map to join those conversations. As for what's next on the podcast, I'm just getting started. We've been bringing a lot of different voices and a lot of different seasons to the leadership journey. I really do want to thank all of you for listening because you are part of the map. You are helping me learn a lot of new things, and I like to celebrate small celebrations. I was really pleased, and like to share that the podcast had over 1,000 downloads. That's so cool, and that's because of the listeners like you. If you'd like to come and join me, please join my show. I'm super excited to meet with you, talk with you, and go through all of these wonderful things. So, hi everyone, here's Dr. Rob Wattawa. I'm signing you out, but I'm reminding you to go lead from where you are and lead where the students are and where our teachers are. Never forget to meet people where they are. Be well, everyone.